Oh no! Something must have happened. This show is not supposed to be on the air right now. Well, it might have been a satellite problem, could have been a tape problem. I don't know what it was, but this isn't the normal Michigan Outdoor Show. This is what we call the backup show. But we're going to have a number of features for you, so sit back and enjoy yourself. We're going to talk about carp fishing European style. We have a great feature on banding woodcock, find out their migration patterns, and duck hunting with a guy who has overcome a lot of problems as a great duck hunter. So you stay tuned. It's our backup show, but it's a good one. It's time for Michigan Outdoors. Kent Lake is a typical North American lake, shallow, full of fish, including carp. Just the fish that Richard Dawson, a bricklayer from Guildford, England, came to America to catch. In England, the average lake is 6 or 7 acres, about the size of a farm pond in America. And most freshwater fish in England, including catfish and carp, are protected. Because of the popularity of fishing and the relatively few ponds where fishing is available, England's fishing is almost totally catch and release. So here was Richard Dawson, English fisherman here in America, trying to fulfill his dream of catching a 20-pound carp. That's a fish of a lifetime in England. Salmon and trout fishing in the United Kingdom is extremely expensive. The license fees and leases that are sold for small stretches of private streams, well, that cost as much as many anglers in America spend on their boats. That's why most English fishermen like Richard can only afford to fish for the freshwater species. It's a lot less expensive. His equipment is pretty much the same as we use in America. A few accoutrements that aren't common here, but the terminal tackle, the lines, sinkers, swivels, and hooks are the same as we use, except English anglers tend to use smaller and lighter hooks and line. Most English fishing is done from shore, not from boats, and they do what they call pre-baiting, tossing out a supply of bait to attract the fish and make them think that they found a natural food supply.
You use a tool in your fishing most fishermen don't use. You call it a catapult. We call it in the States here a slingshot. Why in the world do you have to carp fish with a slingshot?
Well, you need it in England more because the lakes are smaller. There's no need to fish from boats or anything like that. You can fish from the shoreline where they're only kind of 6 or 7 acres, the majority of them. So everybody fishes from the shoreline rather than boats. And just to get your bait into all the round awkward islands or out sort of 20, 50 yards into the lake, something like that, you need a slingshot to be able to put the bait out.
So you're chumming?
Yeah, what you would call chumming, we call pre-baiting, something like that. Yeah, it's just to get a natural food supply of your own of whatever bait you're using on the hook, like sweet corn or any of the baits that we would use in England. Yeah, just to get it out in the water and create your own kind of natural food supply in a natural food trap where they would be looking for food.
After putting the bite in the lake, Richard sets his rod on a holder where the line is monitored with an electronic buzzer. He fishes 2 rods at once in holders, waiting for the signal that the line is moving. If a fish hits one rod, he'll take the other rod off the holder and set the tip in the water to put the line on the bottom where it won't tangle with the fish. I mean, those beeps could drive you nuts. Now the moment of truth.
That's carp.
What do you think?
That's good fish. I don't know how big it is, but it's good fish. I'll be alright. I've dropped the tip in the water so the line will sink right at the bottom. I shouldn't have any problems.
Is it a good one, Richard?
I don't know yet, but they seem to fight harder over here because you don't hook them so much.
Oh, this is a good one.
That's in the weed there. That's what it is. Oh no. Thought it'd come off then. That's the problem. It's in the weed.
Get him! This is exciting, you know. I mean, this is exciting. Oh, here he comes. Here he comes. Oh, nice one, too. Whoa!
For an Englishman, action like this is a real thrill. In his home country, this fish would be returned to be caught again and again, which is why they use big nets with small mesh, so the fish won't be harmed. The English use a variety of baits for carp. Canned corn is a favorite, but we learned about a new one from Richard. Cashew nuts tied underneath the hook.
Carp take cashews?
Oh yeah, they'll take a cashew nut.
How would you rig a cashew nut to get a carp to take it? How do you put one on a hook?
Oh, you don't put it on the hook. You put it just below the hook. You can't really fish on the hook in England. If a carp picks up the bait in England where it's been caught so many times, they get very wise and wary of baits and lines and stuff. And if it picks up the bait and the bait is on the hook, it'll feel the line with its lips. And it'll just spit it out again because it'll know what's going on. It's been caught so many times before. So you have to tie it below the hook with a piece of line about £2 or £1 breaking strain. So when it picks it up, it can't feel the line in its lips because it's a fine. And then when it picks it up, because it's a hard bait like a cashew nut, it can't break it up in its lips and it has to take it down into its pangnaural teeth down in its throat.
Back in its throat?
Yeah. And when it does that, if it picks it up and feels it's safe because it can't feel any line behind it, it feels it safe and it'll suck it back down to the teeth to crush it and then eat it. And when it takes it back down to the teeth, the hook will follow into the mouth and then it'll hook it in. But if you don't fish with methods like that in England, you're not going to catch any carp like you can in America.
You really do handle these really gently. I mean, babies in hospitals probably don't get this kind of gentle handling.
Well, it's all catch and release fishing in England, and I know somebody else is going to have to catch this fish one day. If we don't treat them like this in England, they die, get injured, catch diseases if they were cut and die, and then there wouldn't be any fishing for anybody. So you've got to handle them as well as you can. That's why we use these nets with micro mesh, small holes so that it can't damage the fins or any of the scaling. That's why it's such fine and soft material.
How many times, this is 8-9 pound fish, how many times would this fish be caught by the time it weighed 8 or 9 pounds in a typical English pond?
That'd be hard to say. It could be anything 50 times, could be.
50 times easily?
Yeah, probably in most waters, yeah.
So you gotta handle them carefully.
Oh yeah, if you want the fish to be there for the next generation after you've gone, you've got to look after them.
England doesn't have lakes and rivers like we enjoy. We're lucky we can keep and eat much of what we catch in America without harming the populations. Richard Dawson can't understand why carp are so totally ignored by American sport fishermen, especially the anglers who release what they catch. Well, Richard, nobody showed us how and why to treat carp with respect, but you've done it. I think maybe we should change our attitudes, don't you? You recognize this bird with the long bill? Kind of like a snipe. This is what snipe looked like when we were kids. We went on a so-called snipe hunt at night to throw a burlap bag over these little critters. Well, this is a cousin to a snipe. This is called a woodcock. And it's probably in Michigan the smallest game bird that we hunt. I mean, it does have a breast on it, a lot of good meat. Oh, some people don't think the meat is very good because these critters eat worms. But the woodcock, if you prepare it, fry it lightly, it can be delicious. But this small little bird is one that migrates. It's called a migratory game bird. Little different regulations than our pheasant and grouse and some of the birds who stay here year-round. But this bird flies south. How do we know where it goes, how far it goes, when it comes back, what its range is? Guys like Andy Ammon. Andy was a wildlife biologist for the Michigan DNR for many years, studied these birds, puts bands on their legs to find their migration patterns, and here's the story of banding woodcock right now.
Right ahead. Oh, there's another one. There's a small. Oh, here's a whole brood. Whole brood.
We just flushed a young brood of woodcock that hatched out a little over 2 weeks ago. We're hunting with Dr. Andy Ammon, retired DNR wildlife biologist, who at 80 years old still bands woodcock in the spring to track their migratory wanderings. His young dog Patch is his hunting buddy that locates the woodcock broods in the leaves. Your English setter. can't be an average English setter. I mean, many hunting dogs, upon coming across even a bird that would hold, or chicks especially, would pounce on them or play with them, wouldn't they?
If they don't move, they're supposed to. Any pointing dog is supposed to hold. Hold on a bird that doesn't move, and that's why woodcock is such a good subject. That hen and all those chicks will freeze.
Patch appears to be on point, but his wagging tail says he's not sure. The bird was there recently, but it must have moved. These unproductive points are common in the spring because woodcock walk with their broods all over, leaving scent everywhere. We find a recently vacated nest, probably hatched within the past day or two. 4 eggs are most common, but this one had only 3, and the young chicks had to be close by. Patch is hot. He knows there's birds around here someplace. There's the point. No, wait, well, back again to check that strong scent. The hen went up sooner than we wanted, but Andy's experienced eyes soon located the first fuzzy woodcock chick nestled in the leaves, motionless. This chick wasn't 10 feet from where the hen had flushed.
He is over right beside the tree.
Yeah, the only other one.
And there's the second chick.
Oh, he started moving. Can you hear that?
Mm-hmm.
Be watching.
Now, they might move when they hear that peep.
We've found 2, and from the hatched eggs in the nest, we know there's probably 1 more within 5 or 10 feet. It takes time to pick them out. They're camouflaged so well. Before she flushed, the hen gave her chicks a command to stay motionless, which they would do for hours.
This one's not as active as the others. He's more docile.
The migratory bird bands that Andy uses are all one size, and they fit both adult woodcock and the day-old chicks, like the ones we have in the mesh bag right now. The chicks, being 2 to 3 days old, how far are they along in their development, towards, say, flying?
Oh, they are not ready to fly by any means.
But
not for 12, 14 days.
But only 2 weeks they'll be
Yeah, you bet.
flying,
Yeah.
putting out those
They
feathers.
develop very fast.
The banding that you do when a chick is 1 or 2 or 3 days old, how does the band stay
Well,
on their foot?
It happens that all shorebirds, of which woodcock are a member, have large feet. And when we band them, you can see how big those feet are, and the adult-sized band will not fall off, even newly hatched chicks.
So their legs will not grow all that
No,
much.
that's right. That's right. The band is loose around the shank, but their toes are what hold them from dropping off.
Andy can tell exactly how old the chicks are by measuring their bills. They always measure about 14 millimeters when they're hatched, and the bills grow 2 millimeters a day. So at 18 millimeters, this brood is exactly 2 days old. All 3 chicks go into the mesh bag, which we set back into the same spot where we found them. The hen will return soon to round up her brood. In fact, she was probably within 30 or 40 yards the whole time we did this banding. The young woodcock will peep when the hen calls, and she'll walk in to rejoin them. Even though she flushed earlier, there's a good chance we can find her if we come back in an hour.
Okay.
And there she is, an hour later, about 10 yards from the bag of chicks.
Good. Now wait a minute. Go in very, very slowly. And as you go in, I'm going to come in on top of you. All right? Go slowly, slowly. Work your net in through around her.
Got a branch here.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Okay.
All right, good job, Andy. You got
Go
her?
on up. Grab her.
Where did the woodcock winter?
All right, good.
I mean, they all fly north and breed.
Yeah.
How far north? How far north in Canada?
Oh, way up in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick,
Oh, that far.
and some up in Ontario. We don't know how far up in Ontario. There's probably some almost to Hudson Bay. Probably relatively few that go up that way.
And then where do they go in the winter?
In the winter, our woodcock, most of our woodcock go to Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
the shores, the marshes of the Gulf states and the South Atlantic states hold most of the wintering woodcock.
The band goes on Mama, which Andy says is a year-old female. He can tell by the coloration of her wing feathers.
The light tip and the sharply defined darker interior of the feather. Basal part of the feather.
What would it be if she's older?
They would be like this, mottled all the way out.
Oh, mottled all the way.
Here, yeah, mottled
I see.
without any definite margin.
What about the tail? Is there any significance in
No difference. No difference in the tail.
Well, she has that tuft right up there.
Yeah.
Her tail is tufted in an alarm posture. I'm sure she's not real happy with this banding procedure, but it only took a few minutes. If we're lucky, Andy will be able to release her in a way that we can get a look at an adult woodcock walking freely, a sight we don't often get to see at close range. She's nervous, but she'll come back to join her chicks soon. An odd-looking bird, the woodcock, but there's something uniquely beautiful about them, too. In 11 days, these woodcock chicks will be feathered and flying. Because of this extremely fast growth and their protective coloration, the survival of young woodcock is among the highest of any game bird. The ribbon in the tree marks the spot that Andy Ammon banded the brood that now disappears once again into the camouflage of the forest. Interesting story, isn't it, about banding these woodcock? If we take a look at this mounted woodcock, one that we have on display in our museum, you can see here are their legs, and the band, well, I have a band here. This is from a goose. That'll fit over there easily. But a smaller band will hang on that leg, and that's the traditional way of banding birds. Of course, we take big bands like this and put on goose legs, bands on all types of animals to find out their migration patterns and how long they live, how far they fly. Interesting subject. This is all a part of wildlife management, something that's extremely important to hunters in this state, and hunters pay for wildlife management. Keep that in mind. One of the things that duck hunters do is pay for managed areas for waterfowl hunting. We went waterfowl hunting at Harson's Island on a managed area with a guy named Dave Durrell. Dave doesn't have an easy time duck hunting, but we had a great day duck hunting with him. Every fall, Harson's Island in northern Lake St. Clair attracts duck hunters to the waterfowl marshes managed by the Department of Natural Resources. Who hunts ducks? Well, lots of people, but you probably wouldn't expect to find a wheelchair user among these hunters.
I went hunting, the first duck hunting I went was when I was 14 and I'm 32 now. So that's, well, last 6 or 8 years mostly. Since I've been in a wheelchair, yeah. I went one time when I was 14 and then didn't go again until I started hunting after I was in a wheelchair.
Now, that happened at what age?
I was 17, hit a car on a motorcycle.
And you were on the motorcycle?
Yeah. That was...
Dave Durrell from Detroit is an amazing guy. He lived through a broken back, and then he got into duck hunting. He drives a car, gets around on his own, and found that in October, before it gets too cold, he can even hunt ducks with his buddies.
Driving's real easy. It's I steer with my right hand, use a car with an automatic, and then you've got the hand control with the left hand, and you pull it down for the gas, push it forward for the brake. It comes real natural. In fact, it's pretty easy. Getting in and out of the car is harder than driving it is, and that's just a matter of pulling the wheelchair up behind the seats, shoving the seats back. You could drive a van or a wagon or whatever you want now, depending on what type of injury you had. Like I broke my back. And so my hands and upper body is pretty strong. I don't have any problems pulling the chair in or getting in and out of the car. If I had injured my neck or something, I might be using a van because it'd have a lift on it, make it easier to get in and out. You might not be able to pull a car in and out, although I do know some quads that pull their chairs in and out of the cars.
So you have to go duck hunting with a buddy.
I've been trying to figure out a way to go on my own. I'm thinking about getting a kayak and taking my chair right to the water's edge and just kind of crawling down with the waterproof clothes on. You know, it wouldn't really be any problem, but I haven't found a kayak yet that I liked or had the money to buy a kayak yet. That might be a little closer to the truth. I usually go with a buddy or two. depending on what kind of weather. When it's wavy, 3 is kind of a lot for a canoe. 2 is the ideal amount, because then I can get all the decoys in and the dog and take our canoe chairs and be nice and comfortable. 3, you're just kind of cramped.
The effect of back injuries all too often result in paralysis of the legs. In our Outdoors Forever program, we find this from automobile and motorcycle accidents and from falls, a frightening number from tree stands while bow hunting. Safety and accident prevention is important, and that's a part of what Outdoors Forever does, but the main part is dealing with sportsmen after an accident. We don't want hunters and fishermen to drop out when all they need is a little help.
Just paddle away, and when you get to a dike or something, if I'm with one person, we struggle across it. And a lot of times, here especially, if you get there at the same time as somebody else, they see you're struggling with it. A lot of the people have seen me coming in the wheelchair, and they'll give us a hand and pull us over the dike, as you did. You know, it works out pretty well. Duck hunters are out here for one thing, and they're all pretty friendly.
When a handicapped sportsman has an attitude like Dave's, it makes it a real joy to give him a little help, and it really doesn't take any more effort than hunting normally does.
Well, this makes it fairly easy.
Rollers over the dikes. Who would think that that's all a handicapped hunter needs?
Now, you want a fast ride or a slow ride?
Fast or slow, doesn't matter.
Wait, well, should I get on the other side, maybe? Maybe. Okay. Make sure you're paddling when you hit the water. There you go. That wasn't bad at all.
Now you have to obviously come up a corn row or an area of the field where there's enough water to float.
Yes, unless I've got a strong puller. And lately I've just been coming up the first row. I have to go the first row anyway to be able to see, because I sit so low I can't stand up to shoot, and that's usually what you do. You stand up and you shoot.
Go ahead.
So you come in the first row and I'll knock them down or whatever I need to do when it's time to shoot.
You a good duck hunter?
I can hit them when they come straight in at me. I'm not very good at pass shooting, so I stick pretty much to shooting them over the decoys. I do pretty well over the decoys when they come to the decoys.
What is your biggest problem outdoors, besides obviously moving around, standing up? Is it the cold?
Yeah, it would have to be the cold. My legs get really cold quickly, and although I haven't had any problem with frostbite or freezing or anything like that yet, they get cold enough so that when I go home and go to bed, when I lay down, the cool blood in my legs comes up and just freezes the rest of me. And it takes you a couple hours to thaw out.
So you can't feel anything in your legs and when you're getting cold?
No. I can physically feel down, touch my feet or touch my leg and say, geez, this is awfully cold.
Oh yeah, right here. Oh, that's yours, Dave. That's yours. Oh, good one. Dave's duck went down, and just because he couldn't jump out of the canoe and chase it wasn't a problem. I was happy to do it, and I often do it for other hunters anyway. But I really wasn't needed either. Dave's Labrador was thrilled to make her first retrieve of the season.
Good dog.
Heart thump.
Atta girl, come on, Mags.
Come on, you shoot, Dave?
Yeah, I hit the mallard that you got, and I hit this one too.
Atta girl. Okay, drop it. Atta girl. Good dog, man. Come on.
The joys of duck hunting don't know any physical boundaries. A paraplegic like Dave Durrell can enjoy the work of his retriever and the duck swinging into the sunset as much as any able-bodied hunter.
Down here.
Coming right at you.
Those of you who are championship duck callers might say, holy cow, that Dave Durrell needs a little help with his feed chuckle. Well, he might not win a contest, but let me tell you, his calling brought in the ducks.
How about that? How about that?
Good shot, Brett. Atta girl. Atta girl.
All right.
Atta girl. Come on, Mags. Oh, good girl. Come on. Come on, Meg.
We've often said that with a little help from your friends, you can hunt and fish, even if you have a disability that some people think would end your days in the field.
Come on, Meg.
Good work, Mag.
Atta girl. Come on, Meg.
Good girl.
Come on, Maggie.
Well, that was it. I can't do a guide report. We can't do a calendar. Can't put a recipe on. I don't know what week it is. This was a backup show, but we'll be back next week with our regular program. So join us right here, won't you?
We've gotten, I think it's just getting the start of the hatching. You might point out, Fred, that the reason we can band them when they're so small is because their feet are big enough that the band won't slip off, see? You can't slip that off of there.